We're both members of the University of York Science Education Group. My role in the group is to do research related to science education. And Alistair?
And my role is curriculum development. So this is taking the best evidence from science education research and turning it into products, curriculum packages that will work in the classroom.
We're working together at the moment on a project about genomics education in schools. So it's worth just a moment to be clear about what genomics is.
Well, I think most people will have heard of a genome. Stories about genomes crop up in the news quite frequently these days. Most people at school will have studied genetics. That was really the science of single genes. So how do genes code for proteins and how does that affect us? How is it related to disease and so on? But not all of our DNA is actually genes. There's a lot of other DNA there as well. People used to call it junk DNA, but we know now that it's quite important. So the study of all of the DNA, not just the genes, that is the science of genomics. And that's where school science needs to move on from genetics to genomics, looking at whole genomes.
So we're doing this project at the moment with our partners who are the Wellcome Genome Campus Public Engagement Team. And what we're trying to do is to find out what the current state of research is about genomics education in schools so that we can see what's known already about the good ways to do this, things like what the right sequencing of ideas is, how to introduce them, good teaching techniques and so on. And we're also have a second half of the project, which you're working on, Alistair, and that's to...
Well, this comes back to the curriculum development. So it's about what is actually out there in terms of teaching and learning resources to help teachers teach about genomics. As you might expect, genetics has been taught for a lot of years in schools, so there's a lot of resources out there that will help teachers to teach and learners to learn genetics, ideas about single genes and inheritance. But there's not so much out there yet about genomics, about the study of whole genomes. So we're trying to find out what is out there that will help teachers to teach this new science of genomics.
So in the research review that I've been leading on, we found 112 research papers that clearly relate to the teaching of genomics in schools. And those papers come mostly from 5 countries: the USA, the UK, the Netherlands, Sweden and Australia. And it's true to say that in all of those countries, quite a lot of the research that's emerging is theoretical and based on people's views and opinions about how things should be in genomics education. There's not quite so much empirical research that's based on data. So that's quite an important finding. It's also true that most of the research is focused on upper secondary level learners, so 14 to 19-year-olds. But that's quite interesting and important because one of the key papers, we've set of 29 really fundamental papers that we're focusing on in depth. One of those papers shows that young people at a much earlier age, at primary level, are picking up lots of relevant information from outside schools, their families and so on, that's not always very helpful to their understanding of genomics. One of the other key things we're picking up is that a lot of the textbooks and the materials that are available for teaching genomics are not terribly helpful because they tend to focus on the more traditional ideas of single genes and things. And that's an important research finding that links back into the work Alistair's doing on resources.
Yeah, so this has been borne out in what we've found when we've done a sort of survey of all the teaching learning resources that are out there. Most of them focused on genetics. A lot of high quality stuff out there, which is good, but not a lot of it goes beyond the sort of traditional genetics, single genes ideas into developing new ideas about genomics. But there are some out there, and there are some high quality ones out there actually. So there's a job to be done in identifying really good examples so that we can signpost them, both for teachers and learners to use in school and also for other resource developers. So we can say, look, this is a great example of a resource that goes beyond genetics into genomics. This is the kind of thing we need for the future.
So the direction our project is going in is to find unanswered questions from the research that will lead into new opportunities for us to do further research in genomics education to get those answers, and also to identify gaps in the resourcing we can help fill, and that's part of our broader project within the University of York Science Education Group on developing school science curricula that Alistair and I are both involved in.
So we're hoping that this bit of research about just what's known about teaching and learning genomics and what resources are out there to help teachers and learners to do that. We want to take what we learn from this study and start to apply it. So start to turn it into curriculum packages and resources and learning frameworks that can be used in schools, not just at A level but at GCSE and younger ages, to develop teaching of genetics into a better sort of teaching of genomics.